The Meridian Expanse had earned its reputation as the galaxy's most antiseptically boring region through the simple expedient of being inhabited by civilizations that had developed an almost pathological obsession with cleanliness, order, and the complete elimination of anything that might be construed as messy, chaotic, or biologically inappropriate. It was the kind of cosmic neighborhood where entire species had evolved past the point of requiring organic sustenance and viewed the concept of biological waste products as a fascinating example of primitive evolutionary failure. Most advanced civilizations in the Expanse had long since transcended the need for what they diplomatically termed biological maintenance processes, having developed technologies that allowed them to exist in states of perfect molecular cleanliness without the inconvenient complications of organic chemistry, cellular reproduction, or the various unpleasant byproducts that accompanied biological existence. They viewed such processes with the same mixture of fascination and revulsion that anthropologists might reserve for particularly savage cultural practices. The agricultural research station Harvest 3 represented humanity's characteristically stubborn refusal to embrace this galactic trend toward biological transcendence, consisting of a sprawling collection of greenhouse modules, soil processing facilities, and livestock containment areas that would have horrified any civilized species unfortunate enough to witness the cheerful chaos of organic agricultural production in a vacuum environment. The station occupied a stable orbit around the agricultural world of Kepler 438c, where it served the vital function of developing improved farming techniques for hostile environments, while simultaneously conducting research into sustainable food production methods that would allow human colonies to achieve agricultural independence without relying on the kind of sterile molecular synthesis that more advanced species had adopted as a replacement for actual farming. Station director Chen Wei-Ming had been running Harvest 3 for the past 6 years with the kind of practical efficiency that came from understanding that successful agriculture required a certain tolerance for biological messiness, unpredictable weather patterns, and the various complications that arose when attempting to maintain living ecosystems in environments that had never been designed to support them. He possessed the rare administrative ability to coordinate complex agricultural operations while maintaining the kind of relaxed attitude toward cleanliness standards that would have triggered mass panic among more fastidious civilizations. The morning shift had just begun their daily ritual of checking soil moisture levels and pretending that monitoring bacterial growth was a vital contribution to galactic civilization, when Dr. Olumide Adebayo noticed unusual readings on the long-range detection array. Olumide served as the station's chief microbiologist, though her duties had expanded over the years to include everything from fermentation management to the cultivation of beneficial bacteria that helped maintain soil health in artificial growing environments. "That's interesting," she observed, adjusting the sensor display with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to interpret data while surrounded by the kind of controlled biological chaos that characterized active agricultural operations. The readings showed a formation of contacts approaching from the outer system, with the kind of geometric precision that suggested either military organization or an extreme case of obsessive-compulsive disorder applied to space navigation. The Velthak Purity Council had spent the better part of 8 centuries establishing itself as the galaxy's premier authority on proper sanitation, molecular cleanliness, and the elimination of biological contamination, through the development of technologies that could sterilize entire star systems down to the subatomic level. They viewed the persistence of organic life as a temporary inconvenience that would eventually be resolved through proper application of advanced cleaning protocols and sufficient dedication to molecular purity. Sanitation Director Krix'vel commanded the Velthak cleansing fleet from the bridge of the sterilization vessel Perfect Hygiene, a ship whose interior surfaces had been polished to such molecular perfection that they reflected light with the kind of pristine clarity that suggested the complete absence of any contaminating particles larger than individual atoms. The vessel represented the pinnacle of Velthak engineering, designed to maintain absolute sterility while conducting the important work of eliminating biological contamination from regions of space that had been corrupted by organic processes. The human agricultural facility represented exactly the kind of biological disaster that the Purity Council had been established to prevent, featuring large-scale cultivation of organic matter, deliberate encouragement of bacterial growth, and what appeared to be systematic contamination of local space with the various biological byproducts that accompanied primitive farming activities. Such flagrant violation of basic sanitation principles could not be permitted to continue without immediate intervention from properly trained decontamination specialists. Analysis confirms massive biological contamination consisting of organic compounds, bacterial cultures, and what appears to be deliberate cultivation of living matter, reported the collective sanitation assessment, delivered through communication channels that had been sterilized to prevent the transmission of any potentially contaminating information. Standard decontamination protocols should be sufficient to eliminate all traces of biological matter within approximately 8 minutes. Krix'vel acknowledged the report with the satisfaction of a consciousness that appreciated the elegant simplicity of reducing chaotic biological systems to their properly sterilized molecular components. The humans had developed something of a reputation for biological recklessness, but their continued reliance on organic processes demonstrated a fundamental failure to achieve even basic sanitation standards, and their agricultural activities violated numerous fundamental principles of molecular hygiene. The cleansing fleet materialized in normal space at the edge of the Harvest 3 system with the kind of synchronized precision that could only be achieved through absolute dedication to proper sterilization procedures and complete elimination of any contaminating factors that might interfere with geometric perfection. 9 pristine vessels arranged themselves in the sanitized formation specified by Purity Protocol 9.27, their molecular cleaning systems beginning to resonate with the frequencies that would reduce organic matter to its properly sterilized atomic components. Back on the agricultural station, Olumide had completed her sensor analysis and reached the uncomfortable conclusion that they were about to receive visitors whose intentions appeared to involve the complete sterilization of everything on the station that contained organic compounds, bacterial cultures, or any other form of biological contamination. The approaching fleet displayed all the characteristics of a Velthak decontamination force operating under standard molecular hygiene protocols, which meant they had approximately 10 minutes to either achieve immediate biological transcendence or prepare for conversion to sterile atomic matter. Director Chen, she called across the control center, maintaining the carefully professional tone that station protocol demanded during situations that threatened the continued existence of all biological processes aboard the facility. I think we need to discuss our sanitation compliance status. While Chen Wei-Ming possessed the kind of practical wisdom that came from years of dealing with equipment contaminated by organic matter, bureaucratic complications involving agricultural regulations, and the occasional visit from species who seemed to believe that humanity's continued reliance on biological processes was some sort of cosmic health hazard that needed to be eliminated. One glance at Ulumide's sensor readings confirmed that their long-standing policy of embracing biological messiness had finally attracted the attention of beings who measured civilization in terms of molecular cleanliness standards. Fantastic, he observed with the kind of resigned acceptance that came from managing a facility whose primary purpose involved the deliberate cultivation of biological chaos in a cosmic environment where most species had evolved beyond the need for such primitive activities. Just what we needed. A visit from the galactic health inspectors. The Velthak fleet had achieved optimal sterilization range and was now broadcasting what appeared to be a formal decontamination notice, demanding immediate cessation of all biological activities and voluntary submission to molecular-level cleaning procedures. The message carried all the diplomatic flexibility of a sanitation emergency, which was entirely in keeping with Velthak communications standards, and offered the station personnel exactly 7 minutes to abandon their primitive organic processes or face immediate sterilization. Director Chen activated the emergency communications array and began composing what he suspected might be humanity's most creative attempt at interspecies hygiene dialogue in recorded history. The standard protocols called for calm negotiation and appeals to galactic agricultural regulations, But he had enough experience with cleanliness-obsessed civilizations to know that such approaches typically proved ineffective when dealing with beings who measured diplomatic success in terms of successful bacterial elimination. Meanwhile, Juno Patel had been conducting routine soil analysis in the primary agricultural processing facility when the contamination alarms began their particularly urgent version of the "everyone is about to be sterilized" warning sequence. Juno served as the station's senior soil management specialist, a position that involved considerably more biological complexity than most species could comfortably contemplate, and had spent the last 4 years developing an intimate understanding of every compost pile, bacterial culture, and organic waste processing system in the facility. The station's agricultural infrastructure represented one of humanity's more ambitious attempts at biological engineering in space, designed to maintain complex ecosystems and sustainable farming operations, while operating in environments where traditional concepts like fertile soil required complete reconstruction from basic organic materials. Juno had modified and improved the systems through a combination of creative biology and complete disregard for conventional sanitation standards, resulting in agricultural capabilities that could maintain productive farming under conditions that would challenge much larger planetary operations. The Velthak ultimatum expired with the kind of molecular punctuality that sterilization protocols demanded, and Sanitation Director Krix'vel gave the order to commence decontamination procedures with the satisfied harmonics of someone completing a necessary but routine biological cleaning operation. The first discharge of molecular sterilization beams streaked across the intervening space with the kind of antiseptic elegance that had made Velthak decontamination actions famous throughout the sector for their efficiency and absolute cleanliness. What happened next would later be described by xenobiologists as either a remarkable example of human agricultural engineering or a demonstration of why proper biological assessment was essential to successful sterilization operations. Juno Patel, faced with the imminent molecular cleaning of everything on the station that contained organic compounds, made a decision that reflected both agricultural expertise and complete inability to accept sterilization with any semblance of dignity. The agricultural station's soil management systems were designed to process enormous quantities of organic matter under the kind of controlled conditions that would maintain bacterial health and promote biological diversity, while operating in vacuum environments where traditional farming was theoretically impossible. Juno had developed several unauthorized modifications that improved system efficiency through methods that would have violated numerous sanitation regulations if anyone had bothered to inspect them. Rather than attempting to fight the Velthak fleet with weapons designed for military purposes, Juno chose to weaponize the station's biological waste management infrastructure. The facility's composting operations could be reconfigured to launch clouds of organic matter and bacterial cultures that would contaminate sterile environments. The soil processing systems could be modified to create massive biological blooms that would overwhelm molecular cleaning protocols. The livestock waste management equipment could be converted into a delivery system for organic compounds that would introduce biological contamination on a scale that would challenge even advanced sterilization technology. The first indication that something unusual was happening came when the Velthak fleet's sterilization systems began detecting what appeared to be massive biological contamination events occurring in local space. Their molecular cleaning protocols, which relied on precise identification and elimination of organic compounds, found themselves overwhelmed by biological matter that seemed to be reproducing faster than it could be sterilized. What kind of primitive biological warfare are these contaminated beings deploying? Demanded Sanitation Director Krix'vel, experiencing the unfamiliar sensation of panic as sterilization sensors began reporting contamination levels that exceeded their theoretical maximum detection thresholds. The molecular cleaning systems were reporting complete inability to maintain sterile conditions, while the Contamination Assessment Collective insisted that local space had somehow been converted into a thriving biological ecosystem. Juno had discovered that human agricultural engineering, while messy by galactic standards, possessed certain capabilities that sterile civilizations had apparently never encountered. The station's biological processing systems had been designed to encourage bacterial growth and promote organic diversity, using methods that could be modified for purposes their designers had never intended and certainly never tested in combat situations. Dr. Olumide Adebayo had joined Juno's improvised biological defense by contributing her expertise in controlled bacterial cultivation and fermentation management. The station's research equipment generated significant quantities of beneficial microorganisms that were normally contained through careful biological management, but which could be weaponized through creative applications of existing agricultural technology. "Juno," she called across the soil processing control room, raising her voice to be heard over the increasingly complex harmonics that were announcing various biological containment protocol violations and bacterial growth rate alarms. "I've managed to configure the fermentation systems to create self-sustaining bacterial blooms that should overwhelm their sterilization capacity, while simultaneously introducing beneficial microorganisms that will establish permanent biological colonies on their ship surfaces." The Velthak fleet found itself engaged in biological warfare with an enemy that seemed to operate according to completely different principles of molecular hygiene. Their advanced sterilization technology, designed to eliminate organic contamination through precise molecular manipulation, proved remarkably ineffective against biological systems that had been specifically designed to thrive under adverse conditions and reproduce faster than they could be eliminated. Technician Lars Anderson coordinated the station's livestock waste management systems from the Biological Processing Center with the kind of methodical precision that came from years of dealing with organic waste products under circumstances where improper handling could result in catastrophic contamination of life support systems. He had assigned every available waste processing unit to support Juno's improvised biological countermeasures, resulting in what appeared to be the galaxy's first successful military engagement, conducted entirely through creative application of agricultural waste management. "Status report," Director Chen called to his agricultural specialists, maintaining the kind of authoritative tone that suggested he had always intended for farming operations to include combat against obsessive-compulsive alien hygienists. "Composting systems are generating organic matter clouds at maximum sustainable production rates," reported the soil management supervisor, consulting readouts that had never been designed to track biological warfare applications. "The bacterial cultivation equipment is producing microorganisms according to the new contamination specifications. Livestock waste processing systems are operating at 600% of rated capacity and threatening to create biological conditions that violate several fundamental principles of molecular sanitation." The Velthak fleet had begun experiencing what their sterilization maintenance protocols described as catastrophic biological contamination cascade failure. Their molecular cleaning systems, designed to maintain perfect sterile conditions through precise elimination of organic compounds, found themselves overwhelmed by biological matter that seemed to reproduce exponentially and establish self-sustaining ecosystems on every available surface. Sanitation Director Krix'vel found itself in the unprecedented position of commanding a sterilization force that was being systematically contaminated by an enemy that appeared to consist entirely of agricultural waste management equipment, operated by personnel who seemed to be deliberately violating every known principle of molecular hygiene. The Decontamination Assessment Collective was reporting complete sterilization system failure, while the Contamination Monitoring Consciousness insisted that the fleet vessels had somehow been converted into thriving biological research laboratories. "Report," demanded Krix'vel with the kind of precise articulation that indicated serious disruption to sanitation maintenance protocols. "Our molecular cleaning systems are unable to maintain sterile conditions in biological environments that appear to be specifically designed to promote organic contamination and bacterial reproduction." The situation deteriorated further when Juno managed to establish a biological feedback loop between the station's agricultural systems and the Velthak fleet's own environmental maintenance equipment. The alien vessels began experiencing what their life support systems interpreted as massive biological invasion events, resulting in emergency protocols that attempted to isolate sterile compartments from biological contamination that had somehow achieved complete ecosystem establishment throughout the ship infrastructure. Dr. Adebayo had contributed her expertise in controlled fermentation by converting the station's bacterial cultivation processes into what amounted to a massive biological warfare system. The microorganisms being released into local space were not harmful to alien physiology, but they established self-sustaining colonies that reproduced faster than sterilization equipment could eliminate them, while simultaneously converting sterile ship surfaces into thriving biological environments. "Juno," she reported, with the kind of scientific enthusiasm that came from witnessing the practical applications of agricultural biology under extreme conditions. "The bacterial cultures we're deploying appear to be establishing permanent biological colonies throughout their fleet, while converting their sterile ship environments into self-sustaining agricultural ecosystems. It's really quite remarkable from a biological systems perspective." The Velthak fleet's retreat, when it came, was executed with considerably less precision than their approach, as individual vessels began operating according to emergency biological containment procedures rather than coordinated sterilization protocols. Sanitation Director Krix'vel gave the order to withdraw with the kind of panicked authority that reflected complete breakdown of molecular hygiene standards in the face of biological contamination that defied every principle of proper sanitation management. The cleansing fleet departed the Harvest 3 system at maximum sterilization velocity, leaving behind an agricultural station that was still generating clouds of beneficial bacteria and organic matter, along with a collection of very satisfied personnel who were beginning to realize that they had somehow managed to defeat one of the galaxy's most hygienically advanced civilizations, using equipment that had been designed for processing compost and managing livestock waste. Juno Patel spent the next several hours carefully returning the station's biological processing systems to their normal configuration, a process that required precise recalibration of bacterial growth rates and organic matter distribution without causing permanent disruption to agricultural operations that the facility could not afford to interrupt. The task proved remarkably similar to routine soil management, except for the addition of what appeared to be 43 new ways that the composting systems could potentially achieve interplanetary biological contamination. News of the engagement spread through the galactic community with the kind of speed typically reserved for major sanitation emergencies or the discovery of new forms of biological contamination management. The idea that a human agricultural facility had somehow managed to defeat a Velthak sterilization fleet without achieving any measurable improvement in molecular cleanliness struck most observers as either impossible or deeply disturbing to established theories of proper hygiene maintenance. Director Chen found himself fielding communication requests from biological researchers, agricultural engineering companies, and academic institutions that wanted to understand exactly how his facility had managed to accomplish what several sterile civilizations had failed to achieve despite centuries of advanced sterilization technology development. He discovered that explaining the technical details of Juno's improvised biological defense proved surprisingly difficult, primarily because most advanced species had forgotten that organic processes could be deliberately encouraged for purposes other than basic contamination management. The Velthara Purity Council, faced with the uncomfortable task of explaining how their cleansing fleet had been defeated by what appeared to be a coordinated biological attack using agricultural waste and beneficial bacteria, chose to classify the entire incident and began developing new sterilization doctrines that specifically addressed the possibility of encountering matter-based species who had weaponized their own biological processes. Juno Patel returned to regular soil management duties with the kind of quiet satisfaction that came from successfully completing a challenging agricultural project. Though several notes were added to the technical log about potential improvements to the station's biological warfare capabilities, the modifications implemented during the emergency had revealed interesting possibilities for enhancing the facility's agricultural defense systems, and there was no reason why future encounters with germophobic civilizations should find them quite so unprepared. The galaxy, as it turned out, was a far more biologically diverse place when viewed from the perspective of individuals who understood that the most sophisticated sterilization technology could be overwhelmed by proper application of beneficial bacteria and carefully managed organic waste products. Human agricultural engineering, with its emphasis on encouraging biological chaos under controlled conditions, had proven surprisingly effective against civilizations that had grown so clean they had forgotten the practical importance of having a healthy ecosystem. In the end, the engagement at Agricultural Research Station Harvest 3 became a minor footnote in galactic sanitation history, remembered primarily as the day that humanity demonstrated the continued relevance of biological processes not through improved cleanliness standards, but through the simple expedient of making the local environment unsuitable for beings who were afraid of dirt. The agricultural station continued its mission of developing sustainable farming techniques with the addition of several new biological protocols focused on defensive agriculture applications. Juno Patel continued work as a soil management specialist, though the personnel file now included a commendation for services to interspecies relations and a notation that the biological system modifications were to be studied by sanitation researchers who specialized in the practical limitations of molecular cleanliness. And somewhere in the depths of space, Sanitation Director Krix'vel was still trying to achieve complete biological decontamination, while explaining to the Velthak leadership how the most hygienically advanced military force in the sector had been defeated by a collection of humans who seemed to regard bacterial growth as more important than molecular purity. The universe, it seemed, still had room for those who understood that life was inherently messy, and that sometimes the best defense against obsessive cleanliness was a good handful of fertile dirt.